This is the Good Neighbor Podcast, the place where local businesses and neighbors come together. Here's your host, Jeff Gardner.
Welcome to another episode of the Good Neighbor Podcast. Today we have another good neighbor on, Kimberly Thomson with Rainbows Canada. Kimberly, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to getting into it. I don't know much about your business. This is one of the things that we like to do is I am an audience member. I'm a potential customer. So really asking those questions that the audience might have in their head rather than doing a deep dive into all the businesses. Sometimes we like just going into it blind because we ask those typical questions that the audience may have as well. So let's dive right into it. What is Rainbows Canada?
So Rainbows Canada, or Rainbows for All Children Canada, is actually a national charitable organization, and we provide loss and grief support for children and youth who are going through tough times, whether it's divorce and separation, death, maybe immigration, maybe they have a family member who is deployed or incarcerated or hospitalized for addictions or mental health. We help them work through all of the big feelings that come with those challenging times in our life and help provide them tools and resources they can use throughout their life to handle all that tough stuff.
I love it. So is it mainly focusing on helping people navigate through grief?
Correct.
Right. And I just love what you guys do. We're getting more. It seems like there is, what's the way I'm looking to say this? A greater awareness, a greater understanding of the impacts of mental health. I think there's a greater understanding out there of how we navigate through mental health and its importance rather than just saying, we can't see it, we can't touch it, so leave it alone, which is what I think past generations have done because it's a complicated subject. Nothing against them. I just think we didn't know what we didn't know. And we've now learned more with companies like yourself out there teaching us that. I talk about it a fair bit on the show because it is a great sense of fulfillment for me outside of this business, which is my everyday and the business we're growing. I do some peer support counseling and fitness training at an addictions facility called Cornerstone Recovery on the weekends in Newmarket and Barrie. And similar conversations, I imagine, we're helping them learn new and effective ways, offering them tools to get through the challenging periods of life and increase the quality of their life. As being a human is not easy sometimes, right?
That's absolutely true. Yeah.
To have people out there, to have that quality information, to have a space of safety and comfort to work through those problems, I just think is a beautiful thing. And I think we're having more and more of that. And kudos to you for going down that road because the mind is an unbelievable place. Sometimes it can be a bit of a maze and very chaotic. So the better we know it, I think the better we become. So I love that you do that. There's some fundamental questions that we like to ask on the show, Kimberly. I think all the questions provide us more answers about the business and about the person, but there's some really important ones. This is one of them. This is the why question or the backstory behind it. We like to know why people got into what it is they're doing today. What you're doing is, I think all businesses to a certain extent are very impactful, but personally, from my experience, the businesses that focus on mental health can have a massive positive ripple effect on our world. So what got you into this? What's the backstory behind this?
So I'm a career nonprofit person. I've been in this sector for a really, really long time. Mm-hmm. And as a person who's had a lot of loss in their life, it's always been kind of something that I've been able to look at and evaluate. Say, though maybe this isn't healthy. Maybe this isn't the best way to start coping with loss. And then I think the pivot, it was the impacts of 9/11. I watched 9/11 unfold like so many people around the world, and thinking about all those families and thinking about all those youth. And I had an opportunity present itself not long after to be trained in a program that was commissioned by the U.S. government to support families who were impacted by 9/11. And so I'd taken that training and heard how impactful it was. I didn't use it in my career, but I did use it in other ways. I volunteered with a pediatric cancer patient family organization locally, and so I used some of the activities in that volunteer work in dealing with their youth. And then the opportunity to come to Rainbows came across my desk, and I thought, maybe this is the place that's right for me. It actually came across my desk 3 times before I actually interviewed for the position, and I thought, I think the universe is trying to tell me something.
Sure.
Yeah, but I think, as I say, we've had a lot of loss experience in our life, all along along every decade, and close individuals, and so I understand what it's like for not just for children and youth who are going through loss, but for a family. Loss impacts a family,
Oh
and
yeah.
not usually just one thing. There may be a loss of a parent, but that may mean that income is different, or they have to move, or so now they don't have the same support network, not the same friends, not going to the same school. And I think that that's what drew me to Rainbows, is that it gives us an opportunity to support the children, but we also have adult programs we don't talk about very much. And so it helps us provide more of a wraparound support to the entire family, because nobody grieves the same way at the same time, even in a family. And so if we want to help children and youth, we do a better job when we can help the family. And I see the change every day in the stories that we hear, and the evaluations and the feedback that we hear. One of our programs runs in the prison in Prince George, and the evaluations almost unanimously say, if I had have had this program when I had my loss, when I was a youth or a child, I wouldn't be here today. And that's pretty impactful. Keeps you coming back. And when you can see a smile on a child's face who has the weight of the world sitting on their shoulders, who needs a better reason to come to work every morning and do what it is that we do. So I think that's really what brought me here, and what keeps me here is that impact you talked about, that making a difference, and giving people a place to unload some of the deepest, darkest feelings in a way that is safe, in a relationship that they trust.
I love it. I was waiting for you because you were telling me I've been in nonprofit for a long time. It's like, okay, so this is starting to line up, and I've gone through a lot of grief myself. Okay, that's the next box checked. And now I'm waiting. When is she going to tell me how she feels about the work she does? When is Kimberly going to let me know, like, her sense of doing this work? Because at the end of the day, even if I have a great skill set for something, whatever it is, I may not enjoy doing it. And some people find themselves on that path. I'm good at this thing, so I'm going to go do this. But what I've found from talking to so many people on the show is similar boxes being checked to what you said. I've been doing this for a while, or more common is I went through this myself and developed the skills that I needed to develop to navigate through that. And my life changed so drastically. Now I have the skill set. How can I put it to good use beyond me? And it seems like have done the same thing. And then another very common thread is when you've developed a skill set that is rare, which I think what you guys are doing over there is rare, and difficult skill set to cultivate, often having to go through that pain yourself. When you use that to help other people, that was something that when I went through my own version of this, different, not grief, but and you see the impact on their life, it just, I don't know, it made me feel like a much more useful person.
Absolutely.
And their connection to our species really is, it's something that it's hard to explain in words. It's for me, it's a feeling. You know it when it's there, and it's like, this is why I do what I do. Incredibly motivating, incredibly fueling, and you feel like you're making, even if it's the smallest difference. I like to think of everyone's connected. So if I make one person smile, that's going to change their energy, go to the next, go to the next, go to the next. And it's all of us doing our little part. So I love that. I think that's a phenomenal why. And it is common to hear people. I went through it myself. So I had to develop these skills to now use on a larger group of people than just myself, something beyond me. You would agree with that?
Absolutely. But to geek out a little bit, but
Let's geek out.
research proves, right? We've seen all kinds of research that shows that meaningful support changes a child's trajectory and keeps them away from high risk behaviors. And we see that in the evaluations we see from some of the adults. So why wouldn't you want to do that? Why would you want to watch a child suffer through loss and having challenges? And parents aren't always, when the loss happens, it's to the family, as I said, and they don't have the bandwidth to provide the support that the children need sometimes, and or they have conflicting feelings at the same time, and so they need a place to go. And wouldn't it be great if we could change the world by just letting people unload some of the deep, dark stuff? We could, keep kids in school and reduce addiction and promise high risk behaviors. So, hey, why wouldn't you want to do that?
I love it. And it's interesting. So there's a few things that I really pay close attention to in my life. Philosophy, that for me is teaching you how to be a good human. It's a blueprint for living a good life, whichever one you follow. Psychology is equal to that. It's human behavior. I get to learn more about myself, and therefore I get to learn more about other people. But I have not figured out why yet. I'm around some great mentors, especially in the addiction facility. We talk about these things all the time. I have not figured out quite why yet. I have this darkness inside of me, let's say, this something that I feel shameful about or embarrassed about. It's a failure, or it's a trauma, or it's something. In many cases of our life, we're taught to think about it, write it down, be logical, be reasonable about it, or use reason to work your way through it like a mathematical problem. Often when we're going, at least from my perspective, often when we're going through these things, it doesn't seem like logic often lines up with these deeply emotional things. It seems like, to me, emotion and logic are often separated. So what do you think it is about? Because I learned this in the counseling sessions. I want to go there, hear your problem, and answer it like a mathematical problem. That's what I started off as doing. Tell me your problem, let's find the solution, move forward. I kept doing that. Some people resonated with it. But I found, as over these last 3 years of kind of refining that skill set a little bit and learning more through experience, that sometimes just providing a very comfortable space and me just not talking and them just going through that whole kind of maze themselves and verbalizing it or communicating it through body language, tonality, words, and just airing it out seems to be cathartic, seems to be a release of something. What do you think it is behind that? I'm sure we could have an entire afternoon conversation about that one thing, but what do you think it is about that? Just me having a struggling moment, and rather than keeping it in here the whole time, just letting it out, that provides us some sense of healing. What do you think it is behind just saying it?
Well,
to somebody else.
I think it's, we always, I shouldn't say we, but when bad things happen, often the first reaction, right, is like, why me? Why is this happening to me? Yeah. And so by sharing it, you start to learn that maybe it's not just you. And one of the things we hear from the kids all the time is, I realized that this is part of life. And wow. And so, that this isn't about the fact that, my dad left because I didn't clean my room. This is about other things that are outside of my control. and they really are not great. They really suck. And, and that's okay. And here's how we get past that. But so interesting you said about, that logical process. And, we talk about in our work with our volunteers, we talk about the fact that, like, where do feelings come from? Well, they come from, here. They don't come from here. We interpret them up here, but they come from here, and they have no logic, and they don't need to have logic, because thoughts have logic, but feelings are just feelings, which makes every feeling in every situation okay. And so I think we still kind of struggle because we like to, socially, we like to check off that, done, grocery store, laundry, grief. Yeah, done. And it really has been stigmatized over years about people who are openly grieving, and when it's acceptable, and how long it's acceptable, and how uncomfortable we feel in dealing with people with grief. And I think it's important for people to understand that there's no why, it is, and every is okay. And we don't
like that line.
We don't want someone, hurting, their grief impacting on other people. Absolutely. But it's okay that you lost your mom and it's Christmas and you're laughing. That's okay. And even though we feel the guilt, it's appropriate. And when we accept that these are the feelings we have, then we can start to look at, so how do I work past that? How do I get to a place where I can live a new normal? Live knowing that I've had this loss, make it part of who I am, but keep moving. And back to your question about why do I do what I do? I'm sure a lot of what I do is in that, having, as you said, having gone through a loss and learning how I can help support myself, and then sharing that information with others.
Such an amazing thing. I say that often. I say my my purpose is to find out all that I'm capable of and share it with other people. So when I'm over at the addiction clinic, or even here when we're helping local businesses, I look at the communication as the very same thing. Entrepreneurship is hard. Connecting with people is hard. At the clinic, connecting with ourselves is hard. Connecting with other people is hard. So it's a lot of the same conversations. But it just resonates so much when you say, we have our logic, and that's up there, and that's important. But the emotion here, and it is simply just okay to feel those feelings. There's no right or wrong feelings. What I try to remind myself is that my feelings aren't, what's the word? I don't want to say not accurate, but they're not accurate indicators of my next action. Just because I'm feeling this bubbling, very strong emotion to go punch a wall because I'm really upset or something, that's not indicative of what I should do next, but just to feel it. In meditation practice, especially Buddhists, they teach you to just sit in it, be there with it, try to understand it a little bit better rather than avoiding it, seeking some type of comfort, which is often what happens at the addiction facilities. We feel really not good inside. So we reach for something to provide us some sense of comfort or pleasure, or just moving away from discomfort. So just sitting in it, learning about it, you learn more about yourself, you understand, because you and I may go through the exact same situation, and the emotions in you may be sadness, the emotions in me may be anger. So that goes to say, I can't just learn from other people. I really need to learn why my emotions bubble up in the way they do, which I imagine is some combination of the environment I was raised in, all the experiences that I've had combined, and now have led to this. But that's a great reminder for me, as I think for me personally, emotions are much more powerful than logic and are often indicators of what I'm going to do next. But I think it's on me to understand them better, to sit in them a little bit more, and then decide to make my decision rather than my emotions being in control of my next decision, which I know for me has got me in trouble into the past. I know for many, when we base our next actions on our current emotion, it's a little too reactive. Sometimes just that pause between, and then you decide, I think is a sometimes more effective approach. But I appreciate you clearing that up for us. It's a very healthy reminder, as emotions are tough. We like science. We like math. We like 1 + 1 = 2. Emotions, to me, don't fall anywhere in that category and are complicated. And they come with a feeling, sometimes very painful. And we don't like pain. So let's move away from them rather than sitting in them, which can be difficult.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So one of the parts of this show, we want to give out quality information to enrich the lives of our local community. So you guys in Simcoe County?
We are. We're the I believe we're the only national charitable organization with a head office in Barrie.
Wonderful. And what is your designation there, Kimberly?
I'm the national director.
Okay. So then you got all the good information for us. So we were talking about making what we base our decisions on a second ago. And information is obviously a big part of that. If somebody didn't tell me to wear a seatbelt and show me all the reasons why seatbelts are impactful, we may not be wearing seatbelts today and still having more problems. So we talk about the myths and misconceptions. And I imagine, because what I do on the weekend and what you do align, they're kind of in the same realm.
Mm-hmm.
We have so many myths, so many stigmas, so many misconceptions on the addiction side of things that we are trying to fight to change, because that information inside somebody's head, I can't go near an addictions facility. I'm not an addict. I don't have a problem. I don't need help. Will keep them in that place for much longer. If we can change those myths, those stigmas with something more beneficial, then maybe it will lead to an allure to getting help, lead to a desire to getting help. So what myths and misconceptions come to mind when we're talking about your world that you're in, grieving, with youth, but all ages? What are people thinking out there that's stopping them from moving forward, getting help?
There is still a perception that kids are resilient, that they'll get over it. They don't understand, they'll get over it. And sometimes that's true. But oftentimes it's not. More often, I think it's not the case that, so emotions are the same, right? They're the same when you're an adult as when you're a child. Your ability to put them into words and to do something with them, recognize them is more mature, obviously, as an adult. But sad is sad. So if we as adults struggle with sad, children are absolutely struggling with sad. And so I think the misconception around kids are resilient is that they are. But like everyone else, sometimes they need a little help to help contextualize it, give it language because we know that they don't have it, and give them tools to use when those feelings become overwhelming. Like you were saying, here's what I feel. Now here's what I'm going to do with that. And I think that we also tend to downplay how much children actually know about what's happening, about the loss or the event. And in my experience, kids know a whole lot more than we give them credit for. And I've met children who, pediatric cancer patients, who know they're dying, whether or not they've been told. I've met toddlers who absolutely understand that the chaos in their household because a family member is sick is causing grandma to cry and dad to get angry, and they may not be able to say something, we have a loss in our house, but they certainly have an understanding that the primary caregiver is not there, and that schedules are all mixed up, and that the other adults or individuals around them are acting differently than they may have in the past. So we need to give kids a little bit more credit for what they actually understand, and try and speak with them honestly about what's happening. Because if we don't, then they use their active imaginations to create situations that, because they're self-centered, that are, centered on them. Like, my dad left because I didn't clean my room. So, and they can handle a lot more information than we give them credit for. So they're resilient, yes. They need help often, yes. And they're way more perceptive than we think. We as adults children are very open about talking about loss. It's the adults that aren't, because we want to protect them. And the truth is, we can't, because it's life. But we can help them learn how to deal with all the tough stuff from the beginning, in little bits that are age appropriate. And we have lots of resources, and there are lots of resources out there that can help families do that. But we have to. I really think kids deserve a lot more credit for what they actually understand, and we need to help them through that.
I think that's so crucial. I imagine, not an expert on this, but just from readings and learnings, especially during that developmental age, to have those very potent experiences happen to them, like 0 to 7 or 0 to 8, whatever that really impactful age is for these experiences to really reside in them now and kind of craft the adult they will become if those experiences aren't dealt with. So I'm really happy you pointed that out. Something that I want to delve into a little bit more from my understanding, and I think many other people will be interested on this as well. I look at honesty as kind of like a continuum. Rather than are you honest or are you not honest, to me, it's how honest are you? And is this the right form of honesty in this situation? Because there's so many layers to a story. You can be honest and leave out half of it. It's not a lie, but if I had that other half, would that change that story entirely? In many cases, yes. And I find that adults do this. We talk about this a lot at the clinic on the weekend. And they hold back information. They will often say, I can't let them know that. I can't let them know that, I'm a heroin user, or that I'm struggling in this way. This is why dad's sad all the time, or this is why he's not here. This is why he's really grumpy in the morning. I can't let them know that. They're a kid. And then you will have other people share these wonderful experiences. I'm not saying one way is right or the other. I truly don't know. But I will say that I've seen more young children be impacted by I don't want to say lie, but withholding the truth because the parents are trying to protect them in a negative way. Then I've seen those other groups of kids being told what it actually is. Sometimes I'm listening to this and I'm thinking, is that too much information? I don't know. But then I see them process it. And it's almost like fostered this new connection with mom and daughter, or dad and daughter, or family. It's I don't even know if the children can really identify what's happening, but because there's this super vulnerable moment, emotions are rising and they're communicating it. This is why mom's going through this experience. I have to tell you because I love you. I want you to understand. And it seems like, from my perspective, almost always has it brought them close together. I've never seen one of the young ones say, I'm disgusted in you now, Mom, or, no wonder our family's falling apart kind of thing. I've never seen that. It's almost like I've seen, honestly, Kimberly, many times, like the child almost become the caregiver in that situation. I'll see them reach over and hug them and say, it's okay, we'll be okay. So it's kind of a long-winded, it's a fair bit of context to my question, is this idea of I'm going to hold back information to protect you. We've been doing it for so long. Is it as impactful as we'd like to believe it is? Or is just honesty, knowing that humans are resilient, no matter the age, we can handle, knowing the truth is in most cases better than withholding for my protection? What are your thoughts on that?
So me personally, I mean, everyone's family is different, and caregivers are the ones who know their family best. In my experience, kids, the more honest you are with kids, you're right, it really does strengthen the connection. And if you think about it more broadly, if you establish an open and honest on a scale that's appropriate for age group, if you establish a culture in your family that you talk about tough things, then, when they're getting pressured to do something that's not wise, they're more likely to come to you later. And we can start establishing that when they're young. And I will tell you, and parents out there, that I've never met a child who's taken on too much information. So they'll ask you really pointed questions. And when they're done, when you've answered their questions, even if you're still explaining, they'll just walk away, especially small children. They'll be like, okay, and then they're off. So, and sometimes the honesty is hard for both folks. But if we create a culture of honesty, then they have support for no matter what they're going through. Because whatever impacted whatever that life event is now, it's going to keep coming. Things are going to keep coming up over the course of their life. And we want to be able to give them tools to be able to come forward and to talk about it, or to, get rid of all of that stuff, to unload and understand that there's someone there who's willing to listen and be supportive.
Yeah. I love it. Such important information. Yeah, it's just, I think we can all benefit by, really at the end of the day, to me, you're talking about connecting in a more effective way with another human, with our own individual experience, sharing that with others, helping other people navigate through it. I think it just makes us better all around. Really important information, but super complicated. So why don't we pivot a little bit? Talk about some lighter stuff for a second. Although I love the deep stuff. I think that's where we can really learn, and we'll get into that a little bit after this. But we want to know as much as we can about the guest on the show, not just the products and services and what you are doing out there, although that is often indicative of who the person is. It reveals something about that person's character. But we do like to talk about the fun stuff, as it's not all challenges in life. There's ebbs and flows to every season of life, I believe, and having fun is obviously a great deal of fun. So we like to ask the guests on the show, what do you get up to for fun when not doing your work? What does Kimberly get up to?
It's actually kind of scary, but I'm a bit of a data geek. And so for fun, I work for a market research firm, coding marketing data.
Really?
Yes.
Okay. I'd be interesting to learn about that. We do a lot of marketing data on our end as well.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's they have international contracts, and so you learn a lot by how someone answers the question to, how do you feel about this ketchup? And and so and then we there's always the translation, the humorous translations of people's responses that keep me laughing. But outside of being a bit of a geek, I love living in Barrie because I am attracted to the water, and I like to race sailboats.
Wow.
And I'm not a cruise the sailboat kind of person. Like I like to crew. I don't want to skip. I don't want a captain. I want somebody to yell commands at me and then run around like a crazy person on the ship and make those things happen. It's a bit of where my competitive side comes out. So I enjoy spending some time with the Kempenfelt Bay Yacht Club folks here on the bay, racing sailboats. I don't get to do as much as I used to, but I like to do that. And then when I'm not racing, I have a stand-up paddleboard, and sadly, I bought a sail for my stand-up paddleboard because I can't have a boat of my own. So that's as close as I'll get. So apparently it might be a little bit of an addiction.
Why addiction? That sounds like great fun. Is it constantly beckoning you? Is it constantly calling you?
Yes, it really is. Yeah,
Okay.
It really is. I used to race with friends on Lake Ontario, and some of them were serious clubs. And when I came here, I'm used to they give you a race course and the locations of all of the markers and the wind direction and all of this stuff. And when I came here, I said, so what's the course? Like, do we have a course map? And they're like, yeah, we're going to do a hot dog. What? A hot dog? We're going to go Hooters, Fountain, Hooters, although it's not Hooters anymore. But it was kind of like, oh, this is truly what they call beer can racing. Okay. I'm coming from where they hire crew and we're doing hot dogs and hamburgers on Kempenfelt Bay. But I do enjoy it a lot. I enjoy being out on the water a lot. And so as a Toronto transplant, it's been one of the best things about living in this community.
Yeah,
for me.
I mean, I agree. Coming from the south and now moving to Simcoe, probably Barrie is where I'm looking. You have a little bit of everything. Like I love Toronto, the city. I was just down there this weekend, but it reminded me why I won't live there. just chaos everywhere, cars everywhere, construction everywhere. Yep. What should have been a 45-minute drive from Aurora was an hour and a half. But then while I was there, it's like, this place is magnificent. I love it. I love the buildings. I love the activity, but I need it in small doses. Where it's the same thing as Muskoka. Muskoka is one of the most gorgeous places on the planet for me. I love the wilderness, but I don't want to live there full time. Mm-hmm. So I need people. I need a little bit of activities. In Barrie, you got the mountains, you got the water, you got the people, you got the busy city life if you want it, a small dose compared to Toronto, but everything is there. And that's why it's definitely where my roots are digging in deep. I think it's a fantastic place. I love that you race sailboats. I was not expecting that from data geek to sailboats. That's quite a pivot. Very cool, Kimberly. Okay, so more into the personal. I told you we talked about a couple of important questions on the show. They all have their reasoning for it, but the why is important. This question is certainly important. So we've already delved into this a few times already. You've touched on this, is talking about hard things. I have it tattooed on my arm. I have my 15 rules for life to remind me when those emotions bubble up. It's not when I'm doing really well, when things are going really well, that I often need these reminders, although still important. It's more when chaos comes at me. Who do I want to be in that moment? Well, They are inked on my arm, so I have no excuse. One of them is do hard things. We talk about it all the time in our business, on our team, on the weekend, at the facility, because I find that's where the growth comes. If we're constantly seeking comfort or pleasure or easy things, we're really not challenging ourselves to grow. I think a great metaphor for it is like a muscle. Fitness is my background before scaling businesses. You kind of have to put, not kind of, you certainly do have to put a certain level of stress on that joint, that muscle, those fibers, for it now to say to itself, we're in a new environment. We need to get stronger and bigger to adapt to this new environment. I believe the mind, body, and the whole individual experience is the same thing. If I want my mind to find out what it's capable of, I have to push it to a certain extent. I believe there is a limit, but essentially do hard things. And talking about our hardships, I believe, is another really important way to understand ourselves a little bit more, to get more used to being vulnerable, not stop viewing it as a weakness, as many of us do, as more as a strength. It's a very confident person that I'm talking to that can be so vulnerable in front of me without knowing me. That's a person that is pretty sure and content with themselves. So I find that there is still quite a lot of confusion around, at least stigmas, maybe as well, around sharing our challenging situations in life, because now I'm setting myself up for ridicule, embarrassment. How will they judge me? All of these things. And I just don't find that to be true in reality. The people who share their hardships in life are, in many cases, our leaders, our beacons. And I think it's hard to get a good representation out that in the world. If you go on social media, it's perfect. It's the perfect everything. It's kind of like that utopia, which I think we all know the downfalls of trying to create a utopia. And then you go on the news and it's salacious and negative. So I think it's up to us to understand our hardships. And by talking about them, I think we can move towards it. So we like to ask the guests on the show, are there any trials, tribulations, life hardships that you've been through that you're comfortable sharing with us that probably felt shitty in the moment, but looking back in hindsight, you can say, I would not remove this ingredient from the recipe that is me because it's led to a higher quality of life?
Yeah, and as I kind of mentioned before, I've had a lot of loss in my life, but I think when I was 21, I lost my mom, and I was not, very suddenly. She was very young, not prepared for that, and the family wasn't prepared for that, and I watched our family kind of fall apart because everybody, as I mentioned earlier, everybody was grieving in their own way, in their own time, and sometimes that was conflicting. And then it took a very long time for me to, because my mom and I were so close, it took me a very long time to kind of find my feet again. I just gone away to university, first year university, first term university, first month of university. And trying to get back at it and work through all of this stuff and having some people to turn to, but not a whole lot of people. And certainly not people who were close to me at university, because I just got there. And I think that's really where I'd had loss before, and I'd experienced people who seemed to be stuck in their grief, that they didn't seem to be able to move past it, and desperately wanting to not do that, but struggling to figure out how. And I think that that's where my connection to watching 9/11 unfold, as I went back there and remembered what that was like to, wake up one day and she was just not there. It wasn't that she'd been ill or, that she literally was there one day and then gone the next. And remembering how hard it was on my family, like my my dad, I don't think he had done laundry. I can't remember actually if it was my dad or my brother, but broke the washing machine because didn't know how to use it, or had filled it too full. And so, remembering all of us trying to figure out our own way to kind of live without her presence. And that took a really long time to try to learn to navigate that. And it's been a tool for me through some of the other losses I've had in my life, because now I had that experience. I knew how I, as a person, responded to those experiences, and I learned what I needed through those experiences. And that's definitely shaped. I do that now, right, for a living. So it's definitely shaped what the person that I've become. Although I will say that when I was growing up, we were always a family who were, we were the family who were doing something with the church, or visiting elderly people. My grandparents always said that, we have to leave the world a little better than we found it. And so I think that charitable part was already ingrained, well ingrained in me. And so being able to take my personal experience and that philosophy, and then just being able to translate that to work, because the work that I did in the nonprofit sector was not this kind of work prior to having this opportunity.
First off, I really appreciate you sharing that story with us. Death is a common thing in all of our lives, and it's something that a lot of us don't want to think about. It is one of the things, a part of the philosophies that I follow, that they ruminate on it, they meditate on it, they focus on the fragility of life so that they don't waste time. Mm-hmm. They very much believe that time is out of our hands. What we do with our time is pretty much one of the only things that's in our control. Outside of that, will you get more time tomorrow or not? They believe that's not for us to decide, those philosophies. So if you want to do something, do it now. Death is tough. I don't wish that you went through that with your mother, but the reason why I'm putting a point on this is because there's still so many people out there thinking that every time there's a death or there's a problem, or I fail a test, or I get fired from a job, anything, my life quality goes down. I go down. I am now less valuable. My life has been devalued. And from your story right there, that is the opposite of true. From your own words, has changed the trajectory of your life. Now, having gone through loss after the passing of your mother, you had more experience. You remember how you responded to it. You developed skills, and all of that painful shit, which again, I'm not happy you went through it, but because you went through it has led to you now impacting hundreds, maybe thousands, maybe more than that, work through those same experiences. So I think that story is exactly the reason we asked this question. You went through hard things. They probably sucked in the moment. I'm certain that death was not fun, but it has led to you. You used it as an opportunity to become a more effective human in some way, for lack of better words. Thank you for sharing it. I think it's great. Powerful story.
No problem.
How can people find out about Rainbows Canada?
So we are one of the best kept secrets, let me tell you. We're a national organization, and we have not done a really great job of promoting ourselves as a national organization, although we support thousands of children and youth every year. Mm-hmm. So they can find us at rainbows.ca. There's all kinds of information on what it is that we do. Or we have a gala coming up. They can come out to the gala on May 11th here in Barrie. It'll be a lot of fun, but you'll find out a little bit more. You hear some more stories from some of the folks who've been impacted by our programs, and get a chance to support a really awesome organization, if I do say so myself.
Mm-hmm.
And they can find that information at rainbows.ca.
So the website is the best way to find out more about you.
It really is. Yeah.
Okay. And then my secret weapon here, I don't put it in the questionnaire. I leave it out because I don't want people to script it, although I don't think any of your answers were scripted today. It's been very easy to speak to you. You've been very candid with us, very open, so I do appreciate that. The question that I leave out is this. I talk about only a handful of things in my life. I really find that when I was starting to learn, develop, 20s, I had interests everywhere, or at least I was trying to find my interests. So it was very broad. Read many different genres, do many different things. And then it kind of narrowed my focus to now what I'm interested in, 4, 5, 6 things that I can go deeper in rather than staying so surface level. As I said, psychology is one, philosophy is another, mentorship, entrepreneurship, fitness. Mentorship is something I talk about often. I love the line behind every excellent person, there's an excellent teacher. We are all being taught by something always in every stage of our life. So to think that learning stops after school, I would argue that in a big, big way. There were some people that could say maybe you're just starting. But I was very lucky to bump up against some great mentors. One of them was in my early 20s, and she encouraged me to think about my impact. I was not intentional about my life. At that point, I was kind of just like a feather in the wind. Wherever the fun is where I'm going to go. But she taught me to start considering my impact, what it has been up to this moment. Be intentional about your impact for today, because you may not be here tomorrow. And forever, for however long you are here, what would you like your impact to be? Essentially, I'm born, I will die. What is my impact on this planet? Do you even think you can have one? I would argue that everybody has one, and it spreads much wider than maybe we'd like to think. Mm-hmm. So I like to ask the guests on the show, Kimberly, what would you like your impact to be?
I think that if I can take all of, as you talked about, if I can take all of the hardships and help give children and youth specifically, but people, a better chance, if I can help use my skills and experience and knowledge to help make the world a better place for even one child, then I'm okay with what I've done.
So good. That's it. I love that line. Leave the world better than you found it. Something. Just if you can just focus on being a good human, as it's hard. It's much easier to be a shitty human, I think. Being a good human, takes focus. But I also really love that point. It's been said to me in the books. It's been said to me by a number of mentors. If you can help one person change their life, then the fruits is worth the labor. So it's just been a pleasure talking to you, Kimberly. I think what you're doing is phenomenal. I'm looking forward to learning much more. And if you said we're the best kept secret, maybe we can help you with that as we bring secrets to light. But it really was a pleasure learning about what you do, how it's affected your life, how you've been affected and gone towards this. And you've just been super easy to talk to. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks so much, Jeff. Take care.
Yes, you too.
Thank you for listening to the Good Neighbor Podcast Midhurst. To nominate your favorite local businesses to be featured on the show, go to gnpmidhurst.com. That's gnpmidhurst.com or call 705-413-3775.